Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. Gold and silver imports skyrocket. Let's explore. It's really no surprise to most of us these days that there is unprecedented demand for gold and silver and other precious metals as well in this age of the coronavirus. But there is a report that quantifies that demand and also gives us an idea of how that silver and gold have come to make its way into the United States. That is the U.S. Census Bureau. We're going to take a look at an article here from USA Today that I think lays out this very well as far as how the precious metals are making its way into the United States, especially compared to other overseas items that have dropped. Fascinating indeed. We remember talking about this on the channel, at least anecdotally, about how the delivery from overseas of gold, especially into from London and into the New York, and how this is now been put in together as a report from the U.S. Census Bureau. So let's take a look at this article and see exactly how it is making its way in terms of imports, not just demand. At a time when Americans' purchases of other overseas goods have ebbed, imports of gold, silver, and other precious metals are surging, according to a USA Today analysis of the latest census trade data. The value of precious metals pouring into the country hit a 19-year high last year, which is a $55 billion influx that doubled the volume of 2019. It should be noted that as part of that value, probably makes it sound like it's a lot more than it actually is in terms of the physical metal, because gold reached an all-time high in terms of nominal dollars. Analysts and traders say the trend reflects rising demand among purchasers that range from Wall Street investment funds, which is what the Wall Street silver people are fighting in the silver squeeze, to ordinary people buying up bullion. We've sold a lot and we buy a lot in return, said Glenn Sorgenstein, a Santa Monica, California coin shop owner who's gone from 100 to 200 daily phone inquiries to as many as 1,000. There hasn't been a period over the last year where I could say business has slowed down. So this is something that's been constant for the most part, and I certainly can attest to that anecdotally in my area, and I'm sure many of you can as well. Hot items include bullion coins, such as American Eagle coins made by the U.S. Mint. And I'm going to stop right there, because what about this? We've heard about how gold, especially, has got to be mined from American mines, but what about silver? I've heard different stories there that some of the silver that is being minting for these coins, for these blanks, has come from other sources, maybe Mexico or other high-yielding silver nations around the world. It also means Canadian maple leaf coins made by the Royal Canadian Mint. So here is a chart that really tells at the tail of the tape here in this chart. U.S. imports of precious metals hit this 19-year high in 2020. And look at that. Non-monetary gold skyrocket, blowing away over the past since 2002 here. Fascinating indeed. This is quite an amazing rise that we're seeing just in 2020 alone. And we know that that has increased all the more, especially with the latest round of squeezing that is attempting here in the physical market. It's occurring as we speak, and that's mostly in the silver arena. But you can see the other precious metals, which most of that is going to be silver. I guess very little platinum is probably there, and even less palladium. And rhodium, well, it's just out of reach for all of us these days. But just an amazing. This is just fascinating to see. Now, you're probably asking, well, what is non-monetary gold? That's a category that excludes gold bars owned by central banks, accounting for about 2/3 of total U.S. imports of precious metals in 2020. I like that they use that term non-monetary gold, but really, in a sense, I think that all gold is monetary. Even gold that you wear on your ring, on your fingers, and in jewelry, it has a value, and in and of itself is money. Now, one can maybe make the case that diluted gold, or 18 karat or below, is probably would not make a hard case to make that as monetary gold. But I think anything that is 22 karat or above, I think should be considered monetary, even if it's used for other purposes. Because when taken, it can be distributed, it can be exchanged by its weight. The Census Bureau's count for other precious metals includes silver, platinum, palladium, and more obscure sources such as ruthenium and iridium. Notice it doesn't say there rhodium in this particular case, but and I digress. And ruthenium and iridium, well, they're more industrial, and I think that perhaps platinum and palladium could be increased in terms of being utilized for manufacturing, but there's not a lot of that happening in the United States for catalytic converters and the like. But there could be a chance that could play a role there. In just the first 3 months after the United States entered lockdown, the nation imported $23 billion in precious metals, blowing past the total for all of 2019. We remember those times for sure. Although that rate slid later in the year, imports remained higher than pre-pandemic levels every month. Imports of most other categories of goods declined during the year as a pandemic recession set in, data show. Total U.S. imports of goods fell by about 7% from the year before. So experts say the surge in imports of precious metals in 2020 reflects people's lack of confidence in the government's response to the pandemic, resulting in an increase in risk aversion. And isn't that what it's about? It's about averting the risk, and especially when you don't have confidence, or as much confidence, in the dollar, and also in just the general economic situation here. According to a survey done by the Pew Research Center late last year, public trust in the federal government remained so low that only 1 in 5 Americans said they trust the federal government to do what is right, either just about always or most of that time. There you go. I think that is quite telling, and I'm glad that USA Today included this research from the Pew, including that in this article here from the Pew Research Center. I believe in people. I believe in the free enterprise system, and I believe that organizations outside of a centrally controlled government, and yes, that would include, in many cases, state and local governments, do a better job than a centrally controlled government. There's obviously some things that the federal government should do, but I believe those are limited by the Constitution. And I think they should be few. A government is the most effective when it is tied to the people that are closest to it. In other words, when there's accountability. There's less accountability on the federal level, and there's much more bureaucracy there. So it does not surprise me that these survey with these results. The U.S. stock market fell very dramatically last spring. That's a sign that people are worried about the future, said David Dollar, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, a think tank in Washington, D.C. They don't know how serious the pandemic is going to be. People were scared, and they wanted to put some of their assets into a safe haven. And that's what it's about. It's about protecting yourself against economic instability, which includes deflation as well as inflation. Investments in precious metals, especially gold, have a long history of retaining their values and can be collected in coins and bars, or held in physically backed exchange traded funds, and they put that in quotes, and that's pretty clever, according to Suki Copper, a precious metal analyst at Standard Chartered Bank. And so here we can see the flow throughout 2020 and 2019, and we saw around March it really increased and up through May, peaking out in the amount of precious metals during this particular time. And towards July and August, they kind of ebbed a bit, but still, they were much higher than in 2019. And really, this started when there was talk about the coronavirus, and by the time November, December hit, there was a fear that it could lead to a pandemic instead of an epidemic, and it did. Oshiri Aruvan, owner of Global Gold and Silver, a buyer of and seller of precious metals with 3 locations in New York City, said the company's gold sales have exceeded pre-pandemic levels since his stores reopened from the COVID-19 shutdown in June. The price of gold per ounce increased at that time, and so did the demand. Normally, people wanted to buy 1 gold coin, and now they want to buy 4 gold coins, Reuven said. Reuven said one elderly customer ordered a collection of 4 gold coins for his granddaughter and paid about $8,000. He's worried that he's going to be sick from the pandemic and maybe not going to survive the pandemic, so he wants to leave his granddaughter something for security for the future. So he buys for her a collection of gold coins so she can have something when he is gone. The earliest months of COVID-19's rapid growth in the United States brought the biggest surge or burst in shipments of gold since this monthly trade data shows. It's concentrated very much in the spring of 2020, when uncertainty was at the maximum, the Brookings Institute fellow said, and then you pass those first round of stimulus checks, that calms the stock market and maintains people's income, then gold imports returned back towards normal, but still above normal levels. Global demand for non-monetary gold comes primarily from 2 sources: jewelry consumption in Asian countries and investment interest in Western countries. According to Louis Street, senior market analyst at World Gold Council, gold and other precious metals also have large industrial uses, including the manufacturing of electronics, automobiles, and medical equipment. So here we can see in this chart the U.S. Imports of precious metals surged in 2020, driven by a gold influx. So gold was the biggest driver, and we can see the total imports of everything altogether and imports of other precious metals has really been steadily climbing. Now, you look at March, it's fascinating because silver demand did increase in 2020, but it shows it going down there in April for imports of other precious metals. So this chart is a little bit strange to me, but you can see that other precious metals really have increased, with December being the highest demand for silver and other precious metals, whereas gold really dropped off and went below that. So the crossing of the Rubicon, so to speak, was here in August, and but I think that is why part of the reason why we're seeing the narrowing of the gold to silver ratio. While jewelry demand fell in 2020, Street said, investment demand grew. At the same time, mine sites around the world closed due to the COVID-19 shutdowns, limiting supplies. The tight supply conditions and the strong investment flows are what combined to push the price up. Last May, $8.8 billion of non-monetary gold shipped to the U.S. from the rest of the world, more than 10 times the monthly average for 2019, according to Census data. Some of that growth in import value was linked to gold prices, which rose 17% the first half of 2020, but the sheer physical volume of metals arriving from overseas played an essential role, like the influx from Switzerland, a global hub for the movement of precious metals. For the first 5 months of last year, Switzerland shipped about 286 tons of gold to the U.S., more than it had in all of the preceding 10 years combined, according to Standard Chartered Bank. Cooper, the precious metal analyst, said the Swiss exporters shifted their focus from China, India, and Turkey, where demand for jewelry was down because of the pandemic, so to a more lucrative market, and hence why we saw the movement of gold into the United States. Shipment to Asian countries started to fall, and some months were close to zero. Wow. The shipments going to the U.S. were substantially higher because we started seeing such a large increase in investment demand. Yeah, a lot of gold came over here to the United States during that time. Demand from both investors and jewelry buyers created a successful year for one gold jewelry designer based in New York City. Al Sendimorova, founder of Atomic Gold, said the company's jewelry sales doubled in 2020 compared to 2019. It's about $3.5 million. The growth continued in 2021 with sales for the first month in 2021 4 times greater than the previous January. Wow. So it's continuing. Gold jewelry is not just fashion, it's a second side investment, Sendimorova said. Gold jewelry prices can cost anywhere from $100 to $1,000. People of all economic backgrounds can invest in them. In today's new normal of working from home makes jewelry more important, the only element of flash that can be seen during a video meeting. When I'm in a Zoom meeting, I just wear my comfortable pants, a shirt, and a few gold chains, Sendimorova said. You could only see me from my chest up, so what's the point in dress up? On the West Coast, Sorgenstein, the owner of Wilshire Coin in Santa Monica, said wholesale and retail sales have both been up by about 50% last year since the pandemic started. It's a picture of them. Coins as well as bars made with precious metals are popular among investors. If you have a product, you're in a really good position right now because there's a lot of people who want that product. Sorgenstein said he noticed a change in who's buying since the pandemic began. Precious metals have typically been purchased and held by older white males, but now we're seeing everybody. There's a lot of young people who have educated themselves about the value or lack of value in the US dollar and how they can retain value by owning precious metals. And that's what it's about, folks. It's about retaining value, preserving your wealth, not making or building wealth. Miguel Valenzuela is one of those young buyers. On a Sunday, Tuesday afternoon in September, Valenzuela withdrew $2,000 from his savings account, $2,000, placed the cash in a gym bag, and walked into a coin shop in Los Angeles. It was more cash than he'd ever withdrawn. A 27-year-old PhD candidate at the University of Chicago walked out of the store 45 minutes later, the new owner of a gold Canadian maple leaf and a silver coin. It was like a new thing I'm doing, so it was definitely a little more nerve-wracking at the same time exciting, said Valenzuela. Valenzuela took more than a week researching the value of various coins before making his first purchase. That's crucial. Educating yourself. He called 6 shops near his house to ask if they had a Canadian maple leaf. He had bought some stocks through Robinhood, the online trading app, before the pandemic, but has found the market too risky since. I couldn't take the volatility, so I was like, I want something that's like faith, and I know it's going to maintain its value. Boom, there it is. That's Valenzuela has made the right decision. His research and understanding that it's about wealth preservation. The volatility is just too much for some of these stocks out there, and that includes Bitcoin, by the way, too. So the first thing I thought was gold, and that's what led me to silver. Multiple rounds of federal stimulus checks also fueled his motivation in investing in precious metals, Valenzuela said. He had extra money, and he was worried about inflation. So far, Valenzuela has collected 75 ounces of gold and silver. He's done very well. Amazing. He described his bullion collection as a safety net. He can grab a couple of coins and sell them for any family emergency. Boom. That's what it's about. When asked what he would do if there are more stimulus checks later this year, Valenzuela said, honestly, I'm going to buy coins with that. Boom. There you go. I think this is a great article. I think it really puts into perspective what is going on and what happened since last year. We really, for all intents and purposes, we've not slowed down a whole lot since the pandemic started, and we have this new surge right now, but it's now been quantified by this U.S. Census report. So very fascinating indeed. Let me know your thoughts on this. I think this chart tells us exactly what's going on, and obviously we're going to see more of this probably next year when this report is published for next year. 2021, I think, is going to be a very interesting year for precious metals, even though, as of the recording of this video, and it is the weekend, so the markets are closed, they're down pretty substantially, both gold and silver. So we'll see how it plays out, but we'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.